This is not a block of netherwart. This is not a face, and these are not diamonds. At least, not as we know them. I've said before that I strongly believe that Minecraft uses the literary device known as an unreliable narrator, and Mojang's responses to whether or not upcoming spin-off Minecraft Legends is canon have only served to fortify this resolve. After all, if they're going to hint that events portrayed in Minecraft Legends could be based on half-truths or other falsehoods, why shouldn't we think the same thing could be happening in Minecraft proper? There's no shortage of YouTube videos explaining why Minecraft diamonds are extremely different from their real-world counterparts. While small amounts of real diamonds may be used in saw blades or for record player needles, it is neither possible nor recommended to use only diamonds to make tools in the real world, much less armor or weapons. In contrast, Minecraft diamonds can be used not just when crafting a jukebox, but also for making swords, helmets, and the like. While this disparity between Minecraft and reality could be chalked up to video game logic, I believe there's evidence within the game itself that proves Minecraft diamonds are not meant to portray diamonds as we know them. But before I can explain what I think diamonds are, it's time to address two additional Minecraft blocks, netherwart block and soul sand, which I believe add credence to the idea that we can't even take the names of items in the game as objective fact. This understanding is what will enable me to say that Minecraft diamonds are not diamonds despite being called diamonds in the next video. If that last sentence confused you a bit, then hopefully you'll understand why I felt compelled to split the original idea for this video into two, with this video providing more information on why I believe the text in the game is lying to us, and the next video explaining what I believe diamonds actually are. Starting with the netherwart block. While you can craft it using 9 pieces of netherwart, you can't craft netherwart blocks back into plain netherwart. The Block of the Month article about the netherwart block explains that this behavior is intentional. It specifically describes the player as mashing the 9 netherwart together to form the netherwart block, with players being unable to turn the netherwart block back into netherwart. This behavior has been in the game since 2016, and it would be very easy to believe that mashing the netherwart together must somehow damage them so that they are only useful as decoration or composting material. However, something changed with the 1.16 update. Netherwart blocks could now be found as a part of the new crimson fungi, which is strange. Why would the crimson fungi naturally produce a block that up until that point had only been artificially constructed by the player? Given my theory that the ancient builders constructed sculk catalysts to produce more sculk blocks at scale, I was tempted to think that maybe the ancient builders had cultivated the crimson fungi from netherwart in order to farm netherwart at a larger scale than in their nether fortresses. However, that explanation would still leave us with the question of, why do we only see netherwart in nether fortresses and not out in the wild, while also adding the questions of, how did the ancient builders convert netherwart into crimson fungi, as well as, if they were growing huge crimson fungi to acquire large amounts of netherwart blocks, what did they do with all the leftover crimson wood and shroomlights? Conversely, if we consider the possibility that the ancient builders derived netherwart from crimson fungi, specifically huge crimson fungi, this only adds the question, how did the ancient builders get netherwart from crimson fungi? For the sake of my sanity, I'm inclined to apply Occam's razor and go with the second and simpler explanation. Incidentally, netherwart being an unnatural derivative of crimson fungi caps, cultivated by the ancient builders, would explain why we only find netherwart in nether fortresses, structures which appear to have been built by the builders based on the gold, iron, diamonds, and horse armor that can be found in their chests. This does slightly conflict with my previously proposed timeline, since the builders would have been able to offer the piglins fire resistance potions in exchange for mining netherite, only after they experimented with crimson fungi to grow them into huge fungi. However, since the ancient builders already experimented with netherrack to build their nether fortresses, it would make sense if they experimented with the local fungi too. Perhaps they did so in preparation for mining with the piglins. After all, if they really were so technologically advanced and knowledgeable, surely it would make sense to be proactive in finding ways to deal with the pollution which would inevitably result from netherite mining, such as by investigating the use of local fungi to clean up said mining pollution. At the very least, it would have helped to assuage any concerns the piglins may have had about such an operation. Regardless, this would mean that a netherwart block isn't really a block of netherwart. Netherwart is just a derivative of the caps of huge crimson fungi, which are made of what we currently call netherwart blocks. However, I can definitely see why Mojang have not changed the names of these items. First of all, it could be very confusing for people who've been playing the game for a long time. Crimson Fungi Block and Crimson Fungi Block Derivative don't really have the same ring as Netherwart Block and Netherwart. Second, if I am on the right track with guessing the lore, changing the names of these items to something more technically correct would make the lore implications too obvious. Given how often Mojang talk about how they want players to come up with their own stories, I can appreciate why they would not want such a change to be so overt, in case it would conflict too heavily with some players' already established lore for their worlds. But the evidence for Minecraft using an unreliable narrator doesn't end there. The next block we'll look at is commonly found under netherwart, soul sand. You may have heard of the words apophenia or pareidolia. Both of these words refer to the human ability to discern meaningful patterns where there are none. While apophenia refers to perceiving patterns in general, pareidolia refers specifically to seeing meaningful visual patterns where there are none, such as when you think that electrical outlet on the wall really looks like a face. Incidentally, a block of soul sand sure looks like it has faces, and not just the geometric kind. Even the Block of the Week article about soul sand describes the block's texture as having screaming faces on it, so that must mean these are really faces, right? After all, the article on Minecraft's website says so, and the block is named Soul Sand. I don't believe so. In previous videos, I've argued that since the particles present in end portals are predominantly cyan, the presence of the color cyan in certain items indicates that they are somehow connected to the interdimensional energy present in end portals. I've also highlighted that the large fossils and cyan fog we see in soul sand valleys indicate that these areas were especially polluted with interdimensional energy. And just like the name says, you do find a lot of soul sand in the soul sand valleys. Even when you use boots with soul speed on them, the particles released start as cyan before fading to brown. But the 1.19 update added another potential connection between soul sand and interdimensional energy. In my previous video about Skulk, I pointed out that the giant structure in the middle of every ancient city has soul sand below it. Since that video proposes that Skulk is moss mutated by interdimensional energy, and ancient cities only generate in deep dark biomes, that's another connection between interdimensional energy and soul sand. I know that the usual explanation provided for the deep dark and nether is connected to the concept of soul energy, but 1. That explanation is heavily dependent on there being faces in the textures of soul sand and certain blocks in the Skulk family. And I don't know about you, but I'm not seeing any faces on soul soil or in the end portal. 2. If the reason for arguing that soul energy is involved with the deep dark and soul sand fire is because of them sharing the color cyan, then why doesn't that also apply to the cyan in warped forests and the cyan particles in end portals? After all, in that same video about Skulk, I pointed out the similarities between the track's ancestry and The End, which set them apart from the rest of the game's soundtrack. Those tracks only play in the Deep Dark biome and End dimension, respectively. That would seem to indicate that the Deep Dark and End are connected. There's also the fact that chiseled deep slate, which we find in the Deep Dark as a part of ancient cities, looks like an upside-down shulker, a mob found exclusively in The End. And having cyan isn't the only evidence that the warped forest and end are connected either. Using night vision in the warped forest turns the fog magenta, a color associated with the end. And if we're willing to entertain evidence that doesn't exist in peaceful mode, there's a fairly unique neutral mob that spawns in both the warped forest and end dimension in the other difficulty levels. Granted, I should probably stick more to evidence that exists in peaceful mode, so let's move to point 3, with piglins fleeing from soulfire, including soul campfires, lanterns, and torches. Personally, I think it makes more sense for piglins to run away from something connected to interdimensional energy, something they know led to the mass extinction event in the Soul Sand Valleys, and potentially the rest of the Nether, instead of of some nebulous soul energy that maybe comes from dead stuff. And finally, point 4, I kinda just prefer sci-fi based explanations to fantasy based ones. I will readily admit that at least the latter 2 points of my reasoning are very much based on my personal tastes. But that is the risk you take when you decide to let players develop their own lore for your video game. A sci-fi enthusiast, such as myself, may come along, get their grubby little hands on your precious block game, and decide to declare all fantasy elements as not real. I mean, it's a video game, so technically none of it's real. But you get what I mean, right? If you want to reject the idea of interdimensional energy in favor of believing that soul energy is a thing that exists, that's fine. You can probably still get something from my explanation of what I think diamonds actually are. Just substitute interdimensional energy with soul energy. It will get a bit more complicated once the lore series gets to the Illagers and Allays, but those videos are a long way off. Like I said before, I originally had planned to include the material from this video in the next one, but it got way too long. Thank you in advance for your patience. I will finally get around to discussing the true identity of Minecraft diamonds in the next video. Until next time, take care.